None But Ourselves. Jocelyn Jean-Louis Hardrick. Copyright 2025 Jocelyn Jean-Louis Hardrick. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. Contents. Table of Contents. Epilogue. Introduction. Understanding our inner landscape. Awakening our inner power. Defining personal agency. Recognizing internal barriers. The power of self-perception. Breaking systemic constraints. Breaking the chains of fear. The anatomy of fear. Fear's hidden narratives. Mapping personal limitations. Navigating systemic challenges. Mapping systemic power structures. Personal agency in collective contexts. Strategies for constructive engagement. Personal transformation. Crafting your authentic path. Mapping your inner compass. Harmonizing life and purpose. Embracing lifelong transformation. Chapter 1. Introduction. Epilogue. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Bob Marley, Redemption Song. I have carried these words with me for years. They have been a lighthouse, a reminder, a warning, and a call to action. Bob Marley sang them as a declaration of freedom, not just from physical chains, but from the ones we carry in our minds, the ones placed there by history, by society, by fear, by doubt. And so, this book is my response to that call. None But Ourselves is a reflection on the journey of self-liberation. It is a collection of experiences mine, yours, ours woven together in the form of women I have known, women I have been, and women I have become. The characters in these pages are not exact replicas of any one person, but they are real in spirit. They embody the struggles and triumphs of many women I have met, worked with, learned from, and loved. They are the fighters, the dreamers, the survivors, the revolutionaries, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters, the builders. These stories do not follow a straight path, because life does not. Instead, they twist and turn, just as we do when we are breaking out of boxes meant to contain us. Some of these women rise. Some stumble. Some are still finding their way. But through them all runs a common truth. We were made for times such as this. I did not arrive at this book, this moment, this version of myself easily. I have had to wrestle with the same questions many of us face. Who am I beyond the roles assigned to me? What do I owe to my past, my ancestors, my community? How do I move forward when everything seems designed to hold me back? These questions are not new. Women before us have asked them. Women after us will ask them, and each of us must find our own way to answer. There have been times when I did not believe I could make it through. When exhaustion sat heavy on my bones, when the world tried to shrink me into something smaller, more manageable, more acceptable. But I have also known moments of radical joy, of unexpected kindness, of unshakable love. And I have learned that true freedom, the kind that Marley spoke of, begins inside us. It is the moment we realize that we hold the key, that we are not waiting to be saved, that we are the ones we have been waiting for. This book is not a manual. It is not a checklist of how to fix your life. It is a mirror and a map. It offers glimpses of what is possible, of what is already happening, of what we are capable of when we refuse to be defined by other people's limits. It is a reminder that we come from a long line of women who have survived, thrived, and changed the world, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And now, it is our turn. Welcome to None But Ourselves. Let's free our minds. The moment you decide to reclaim your life is rarely dramatic. It's often a quiet, almost imperceptible shift that happens deep within your heart. For me, that shift began with a simple yet profound realization. We are the architects of our own liberation. Growing up, I watched countless individuals, friends, family, community members trapped in cycles of limitation, their potential suffocated by invisible barriers of fear, systemic constraints, and internalized narratives. These weren't just personal struggles. They were collective experiences that echoed through generations, particularly within communities that have historically been marginalized and oppressed. Your journey of self-discovery isn't just about personal achievement. It's about understanding the intricate web of experiences, societal structures, and internal dialogues that have shaped your current reality. Every belief you hold, every decision you make, is a result of complex layers of conditioning, some inherited, some chosen, many unconsciously absorbed. Imagine your life as a powerful river. Right now, that river might feel constrained, flowing through narrow channels defined by external expectations, past traumas, and learned limitations. But rivers have an inherent power to reshape landscapes. They can carve through mountains, create new paths, and transform entire ecosystems. You possess that same transformative potential. This book isn't about offering quick fixes or magical solutions. It's an invitation to a profound journey of self-reclamation. We'll explore how personal agency, the ability to recognize and exercise your power to make meaningful choices, is the cornerstone of genuine transformation. Consider the stories we tell ourselves. These internal narratives are like invisible architects, designing the blueprint of our lived experiences. Some of these stories protect us, while others limit us. Learning to distinguish between protective wisdom and restrictive fear is a critical skill in your journey of empowerment. Fear operates in subtle, sophisticated ways. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It might sound like self-doubt, procrastination, or the persistent belief that you're not enough. These whispers can be so familiar that they blend into the background of your consciousness, shaping your choices without you even realizing it. But here's a powerful truth. Recognition is the first step to transformation. By bringing these hidden narratives into the light of conscious awareness, you begin to dismantle their power. You start to see them not as immutable truths, but as learned patterns that can be rewritten. Systemic challenges add another layer of complexity to personal transformation. The structures around us, educational systems, economic frameworks, social hierarchies often create invisible boundaries that can feel insurmountable. But understanding these systems doesn't mean being defeated by them. Knowledge becomes your tool of liberation. Your path to empowerment is deeply personal, yet simultaneously universal. It's about reconnecting with your inherent worth, recognizing the strength that has always resided within you, and developing the courage to live authentically. Throughout this book, we'll explore practical strategies, reflective exercises, and transformative perspectives that will help you navigate this journey. We'll dive deep into understanding personal agency, breaking through fear-based limitations, and creating a life aligned with your truest self. This isn't just about individual change. When you commit to your personal transformation, you create ripple effects that extend far beyond your immediate circle. You become a living testament to the power of self-determination, inspiring others to recognize and embrace their own potential. Are you ready to embark on this journey? To peel back the layers of conditioning, to challenge the narratives that have held you back, and to step into a more empowered version of yourself. The path ahead is not about perfection, but about progress. It's about continuous growth, radical self-compassion, and the unwavering belief that you are capable of creating profound change. Your liberation begins now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are perfect, but in this very moment. Welcome to a journey of reclaiming yourself. None but ourselves can free our minds. Understanding our inner landscape. Chapter 1. Awakening our inner power. Defining personal agency. Your inner voice is a compass, guiding you through the complex landscape of personal choice and self-determination. Personal agency isn't just a concept, it's the heartbeat of your lived experience, the invisible force that transforms passive existence into an active, intentional journey. Imagine your life as a canvas where you hold the paintbrush, not as a passive recipient of circumstances, but as the primary architect of your narrative. Personal agency is this profound ability to recognize that you are not merely a product of your environment, but a powerful creator of your reality. At its core, personal agency represents the fundamental human capacity to make deliberate choices that shape our lives. It's more than decision making. It's a radical act of self-ownership that challenges external narratives and systemic limitations. When Bob Marley sang about mental slavery, he wasn't just making music, he was articulating a deep truth about human potential. True liberation begins in the mind. Breaking down personal agency reveals several interconnected dimensions. First, there's self-awareness, the ability to recognize your thoughts, emotions, and patterns of behavior. This isn't about perfection, but about honest introspection. You learn to observe yourself without judgment, understanding that every experience carries a lesson. Next comes intentionality. Personal agency means moving from reactive to proactive living. Instead of waiting for opportunities, you create them. Instead of being defined by past experiences, you use them as stepping stones. This shift isn't instantaneous. It's a practice, a daily commitment to choosing your response over being controlled by external circumstances. Consider Marie, a first-generation immigrant who grew up hearing she was limited by her background. Her personal agency emerged when she recognized that these were external narratives, not her truth. She didn't just dream of success, she strategically dismantled barriers, pursuing education, building networks, and rewriting her own story. Psychological research reveals that personal agency is deeply connected to our belief systems. People with high personal agency share certain characteristics: resilience, adaptability, and an internal locus of control. They view challenges as opportunities for growth, not insurmountable obstacles. However, personal agency isn't about ignoring systemic realities. It's about navigating them with strategic wisdom. You acknowledge external constraints while simultaneously refusing to be defined by them. This nuanced approach recognizes both individual power and collective context. Self-assessment becomes crucial in developing personal agency. Ask yourself, where do I feel most powerless? What stories am I telling myself that limit my potential? What small actions can I take today to reclaim my sense of control? Practical tools for enhancing personal agency include mindful decision mapping. Document your choices. Analyze their origins. Identify patterns of external influence. Boundary setting. Learn to say no without guilt. Prioritize your well-being. Recognize that self-preservation is not selfishness. Skill development. Continuously learn. Expand your capabilities. Build confidence through competence. The journey of personal agency is not linear. Some days you'll feel empowered, others overwhelmed. The key is consistent, compassionate self-engagement. You're not seeking perfection, but progress. Cultural narratives often portray personal agency as an individual achievement, but true empowerment recognizes our interconnectedness. Your personal liberation contributes to collective transformation. When you heal, grow, and reclaim your power, you create ripple effects that inspire others. Remember, personal agency isn't about controlling every outcome. It's about maintaining your inner equilibrium, making conscious choices, and trusting your capacity to adapt and thrive, regardless of external circumstances. Your life is not a predetermined script. It's a dynamic, evolving story where you are the primary author, director, and protagonist. Embrace this power. Celebrate your ability to choose, to grow, to transform. Recognizing internal barriers. Your internal dialogue is a powerful architect of your reality, silently constructing walls that can either imprison or liberate your potential. These psychological barriers, invisible yet potent, emerge from a complex web of experiences, societal conditioning, and deeply ingrained narratives that whisper limitations into your subconscious. Imagine your mind as a sophisticated security system designed to protect you, but often mistakenly blocking opportunities for growth. These internal barriers are not enemies, but misguided guardians of a perceived safety that ultimately constrains your true self. Self-limiting beliefs operate like invisible threads, subtly pulling you away from bold actions and authentic expression. They manifest in countless ways. The voice that says, "You're not good enough," the hesitation before taking a risk, the automatic retreat from challenges that seem slightly beyond your comfort zone. These psychological barriers often originate from early life experiences. Childhood messages, parental expectations, cultural narratives, and past failures create a complex emotional landscape that shapes your self-perception. A single critical comment from a teacher, a dismissive remark from a parent, or a traumatic rejection can plant seeds of doubt that grow into towering walls of resistance. Consider how these internal barriers typically show up. Imposter syndrome, constant fear of being found out as inadequate, minimizing personal achievements, attributing success to luck rather than skill, feeling like a fraud despite concrete evidence of competence, perfectionism, paralyzing fear of making mistakes, setting unrealistic standards, avoiding tasks that might reveal perceived inadequacies, equating self-worth with flawless performance, comparison trap, constantly measuring yourself against others, feeling perpetually insufficient, allowing external metrics to define your value, losing sight of your unique journey, fear of vulnerability, protecting yourself by emotional withdrawal, avoiding genuine connections, presenting a curated, safe version of yourself, blocking authentic emotional experiences. Recognizing these barriers requires radical self-honesty. It's not about harsh self-judgment, but compassionate observation. Think of this process like being a curious scientist exploring the intricate mechanisms of your inner world. Self-reflection diagnostic tool. Pause and ask yourself, when do I feel most stuck? What stories do I repeatedly tell myself about my capabilities? Where do I consistently stop myself before even trying? What emotions arise when I contemplate stepping outside my comfort zone? Journaling prompt. Map your internal landscape. Draw a mental map of your psychological barriers. Identify. Origin points, childhood experiences, specific memories, emotional triggers, recurring thought patterns, physical sensations associated with these barriers. Visualization exercise. Barrier deconstruction. Close your eyes. Imagine your internal barriers as a physical wall. Observe its texture, height, and material. Now, visualize yourself equipped with tools of understanding, slowly and methodically dismantling this wall, brick by brick. Strategies for dismantling psychological obstacles. Cognitive reframing. Challenge negative thoughts with evidence. Replace absolute statements with nuanced perspectives. Ask, is this thought a fact or a feeling? Incremental exposure. Design small, manageable challenges. Gradually expand your comfort zone. Celebrate each step, no matter how minor. Compassionate self-talk. Speak to yourself as you would a beloved friend. Develop a kind, encouraging internal dialogue. Acknowledge efforts, not just outcomes. Skill building. Identify specific skills that boost confidence. Invest in continuous learning. Create a personal development roadmap. Emotional resilience training. Practice mindfulness. Develop emotional regulation techniques. Learn to sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. Remember, recognizing internal barriers is not about elimination, but understanding. These psychological mechanisms developed as survival strategies. They're not your enemy, they're complex adaptations waiting to be transformed into sources of strength. Your internal barriers are not permanent structures. They are fluid, malleable constructs that can be reshaped through awareness, compassion, and intentional action. Each moment offers an opportunity to challenge these limitations, to choose growth over fear, authenticity over protection. The power of self-perception. Your perception is a powerful lens that magnifies or diminishes your potential, creating an internal landscape that either propels you forward or holds you captive in the shadows of self-doubt. Every thought you entertain about yourself becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your identity, painting a picture that either reflects your true essence or a distorted reflection shaped by external expectations and internalized limitations. Self-perception is not a static concept, but a dynamic, ever-evolving narrative that you have the power to rewrite. It's a complex fabric woven from threads of personal experiences, cultural conditioning, emotional memories, and unconscious beliefs. Like an intricate map, your self-perception guides your decisions, influences your relationships, and ultimately determines the boundaries of what you believe is possible for yourself. Imagine your self-perception as an internal GPS system. Just as a navigation tool can either lead you precisely to your destination or send you down meandering, unproductive paths, your self-perception can either direct you toward your most authentic life or trap you in cycles of limitation and self-sabotage. The roots of self-perception run deep, often originating in childhood experiences and early interactions. These formative moments create invisible scripts that play continuously in the background of your consciousness. A teacher's offhand comment, a parent's expectation, or a peer's criticism can embed themselves so deeply that they become indistinguishable from your own thoughts. Cultural narratives also play a significant role in shaping self-perception. Society presents complex, often contradictory messages about worth, success, and identity. These external standards can create a persistent undercurrent of comparison and inadequacy, making it challenging to recognize and honor your unique path. Consider how self-perception manifests in different life domains. Professional identity. How you view your capabilities, the career paths you believe are accessible. Your willingness to pursue opportunities, the confidence with which you negotiate and advocate for yourself. Relational dynamics, the type of relationships you believe you deserve. Your communication patterns, boundaries you establish or fail to establish. Your capacity for vulnerability and authentic connection. Personal growth, your openness to learning, resilience in facing challenges, willingness to take calculated risks, ability to adapt and reinvent yourself. Breaking free from limiting self-perception requires a deliberate, compassionate approach. It's not about harsh self-criticism, but about developing a nuanced, empowering understanding of yourself. Self-perception audit toolkit. Narrative excavation. Identify the origin of your current self-narrative. Trace beliefs back to their source. Distinguish between inherited stories and your authentic truth. Recognize which narratives no longer serve your growth. Belief mapping exercise. Draw a visual representation of your current self-perception. Use colors, symbols, and words that represent strengths, perceived limitations, aspirational qualities, emotional landscapes, cognitive reframing techniques. Challenge absolute statements. Replace limiting language with possibility-oriented phrases. Develop a more nuanced, compassionate internal dialogue. Embodiment practices. Use physical postures that communicate confidence. Practice power poses. Align body language with desired self-perception. Create a physical experience of empowerment. Neuroplasticity in action. Your brain is remarkably adaptable. Each time you consciously challenge a limiting belief, you're creating new neural pathways. Think of this as rewiring your internal operating system, replacing outdated software with more expansive, supportive programming. Practical strategies for transformation. Intentional affirmation. Craft personalized statements that reflect your desired self-image. Use present tense, positive language. Repeat consistently to reprogram subconscious patterns. Evidence collection. Maintain a success journal. Document achievements, no matter how small. Create a tangible record of your capabilities. Boundary setting. Learn to say no to experiences that diminish your sense of self. Surround yourself with relationships that reflect and support your growth. Create environments that nurture your emerging identity. Continuous learning. Approach personal development as an ongoing journey. Embrace a growth mindset. View challenges as opportunities for expansion. Your self-perception is not a fixed destination, but a dynamic, evolving landscape. Each moment offers an invitation to step into a more empowered version of yourself, to shed inherited limitations, and to embrace the boundless potential that resides within you. Breaking systemic constraints. Chapter 2. Breaking the chains of fear. The anatomy of fear. Fear whispers and sometimes screams, weaving itself into the fabric of our daily experiences, shaping our choices, limiting our potential, and defining invisible boundaries around our dreams. It's a primal force that resides deep within our neurological landscape, a complex emotional mechanism that has both protected and imprisoned humanity since our earliest evolutionary moments. At its core, fear is a sophisticated survival response hardwired into our brain's intricate neural networks. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure nestled deep within the brain's temporal lobe, acts as our internal alarm system. When triggered, it floods our body with a cascade of neurochemicals adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine preparing us for immediate action. This neurological response isn't a weakness. It's a testament to human resilience. Our ancestors survived harsh environments and potential predators because fear transformed them into hyper-aware, lightning-quick decision-makers. What once protected us from immediate physical threats now often manifests as psychological barriers that restrict our personal growth and potential. Fear operates on multiple levels, creating intricate patterns of response that extend far beyond simple fight or flight mechanisms. Modern neuroscience reveals a third response: freeze. When overwhelmed, some individuals become paralyzed, unable to move forward or retreat. This response isn't a character flaw, but a sophisticated survival strategy developed through generations of complex human experiences. Psychological research suggests that fear isn't uniform, but deeply personalized. Your fears emerge from a unique combination of genetic predispositions, childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, and individual traumas. A loud noise might trigger intense anxiety for one person, while leaving another completely unaffected. These variations demonstrate how fear is a deeply subjective experience. Cultural contexts profoundly shape our fear responses. In collectivist societies, fears often revolve around social rejection or disappointing community expectations. Individualistic cultures might emphasize personal failure or financial instability. These societal frameworks create invisible scripts that dictate our emotional reactions, often without our conscious awareness. Personal trauma serves as a powerful architect of fear. A single significant event can rewire neural pathways, creating lasting emotional imprints that influence future responses. A child who experiences sudden abandonment might develop deep-seated fears of intimacy. Someone who encounters a severe professional setback could develop paralyzing performance anxiety. Understanding your unique fear landscape requires honest self-examination. The following diagnostic framework can help you map your fear patterns. Identification phase. List situations that consistently trigger anxiety. Note physical sensations accompanying these experiences. Recognize recurring thought patterns during fearful moments. Origin exploration. Trace current fears to their earliest memories, examine family dynamics, and inherited emotional patterns. Identify potential triggering events that shaped your responses. Response analysis. Categorize your typical fear responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Understand the underlying emotional needs driving these reactions. Recognize how these responses have both protected and limited you. Self-assessment isn't about judgment, but compassionate understanding. Each fear pattern represents an intelligent survival mechanism developed to protect you during challenging moments. By approaching your fears with curiosity instead of criticism, you transform them from insurmountable obstacles into navigable terrain. Neuroplasticity offers hope. Our brains remain malleable throughout life, capable of rewiring fear responses through consistent, intentional practice. Meditation, exposure therapy, and cognitive reframing can gradually reshape neural pathways, diminishing fear's grip on our potential. Consider fear as energy neither inherently good nor bad, but a powerful force awaiting purposeful direction. Like electricity, fear can either paralyze or illuminate. The difference lies in your relationship with this fundamental human experience. Your journey isn't about eliminating fear, but developing a nuanced, compassionate dialogue with it. Acknowledge its presence, understand its origins, and gradually expand the boundaries of your comfort zone. Each small step becomes an act of courage, gradually reconstructing your internal landscape. Fear will always be part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to be the author of your story. You hold the pen, deciding how deeply it influences your narrative, your choices, and ultimately, your life's trajectory. Fear's hidden narratives. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful architects of our reality, silently shaping our experiences, choices, and ultimately, our destiny. Hidden beneath the surface of our conscious awareness, these narratives weave intricate webs of fear that can trap us in cycles of limitation and self-doubt. Every personal narrative is a complex fabric of experiences, emotions, and inherited beliefs. These stories aren't just random thoughts. They're sophisticated psychological constructions that emerge from a lifetime of interactions, observations, and internalized messages. Some narratives are whispered by family members, others are screamed by societal expectations, and many are quietly reinforced by our own past experiences. Consider Anita, a 35-year-old marketing professional who consistently sabotages her career opportunities. Her internal narrative isn't a single statement, but a layered script. I'm not good enough. Success is for other people. Trying will only lead to embarrassment. This story didn't emerge overnight, but was carefully constructed through years of subtle messages from her immigrant parents who struggled with economic uncertainty. Family narratives are particularly potent transmission mechanisms for fear. They operate like genetic inheritance, passed down through generations, often unconsciously. A family history of financial struggle can create a deep-seated belief that prosperity is unattainable. Childhood memories of parental anxiety about money, job security, or social standing become encoded in our psychological DNA. Societal scripts add another complex layer to our fear narratives. Cultural expectations create invisible boundaries that define what's possible, acceptable, and permissible. For marginalized communities, these scripts can be especially restrictive. A Black woman might internalize narratives about limited professional advancement, while an immigrant might carry stories of perpetual outsider status. Trauma serves as a powerful narrative generator. A single significant event can create a comprehensive story about vulnerability, danger, and self-protection. Someone who experiences a sudden job loss might develop an entire narrative about professional instability, interpreting every career challenge through this lens of potential failure. Psychological defense mechanisms make these narratives remarkably resilient. Confirmation bias ensures we continuously seek evidence supporting our existing beliefs. If you believe you're unworthy of success, you'll unconsciously notice and remember experiences that reinforce this perspective while dismissing contradictory information. Cognitive dissonance further entrenches these narratives. When reality challenges our established stories, we experience psychological discomfort. Instead of updating our narrative, we often double down, finding elaborate justifications that preserve our existing belief system. Identifying these hidden narratives requires a combination of radical honesty and compassionate self-observation. Narrative mapping becomes a crucial tool in this process. This involves systematically tracing the origins of your fear stories, understanding their emotional roots, and recognizing the protective function they once served. A practical narrative mapping exercise might look like this. Select a recurring fear or limitation in your life. Trace its earliest memory or origin point. Identify the primary emotions associated with this narrative. Recognize the protective mechanism behind the story. Question the current relevance of this narrative. Journaling emerges as a powerful technique for uncovering unconscious fear narratives. By creating a consistent practice of reflective writing, you create a safe space for exploring your inner landscape. The key is approaching this practice without judgment, viewing your narratives as adaptive strategies rather than personal failures. Deconstructing these narratives doesn't mean immediate elimination. Instead, it's about developing a more nuanced, compassionate relationship with your internal stories. Recognize that these narratives emerged as survival mechanisms designed to protect you during challenging moments. The transformation begins with gentle questioning. When a fear narrative emerges, pause and ask, is this absolutely true? What evidence supports or challenges this story? How does holding onto this narrative serve or limit me? Reframing becomes the ultimate act of personal liberation. By consciously constructing alternative narratives, you rewire your psychological responses. This isn't about toxic positivity or dismissing genuine challenges, but about creating more expansive, empowering stories that honor your resilience and potential. Your fear narratives are not permanent sentences, but drafts waiting to be revised. You hold the pen, the power to rewrite your story with each conscious choice, each moment of courageous self-reflection. Mapping personal limitations. The human mind is a labyrinth of uncharted territories, where personal limitations lurk like silent guardians, protecting us from perceived threats while simultaneously constraining our potential. Every limitation is a story waiting to be understood, a barrier yearning to be transformed into a bridge of growth and self-discovery. Personal limitations are not fixed monuments, but fluid landscapes shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and unconscious patterns. They emerge from complex interactions between our inner psychological world and external environmental influences. Understanding these limitations requires a nuanced, compassionate approach that goes beyond surface-level analysis. Consider how limitations manifest across different life domains. In professional settings, they might appear as self-doubt preventing career advancement. Emotionally, they could present as recurring relationship patterns that sabotage intimacy. Spiritually, they might emerge as a sense of disconnection or feeling stuck in predetermined narratives. Mapping personal limitations is an intimate cartography of the self, a journey of excavation and reconstruction. It demands radical honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about our inner landscape. The diagnostic process begins with comprehensive self-assessment. This isn't about judgment, but understanding. Imagine creating a personal limitation map where each constraint is viewed as information rather than a verdict. Your limitations are not your identity. They are temporary configurations of learned responses. Professional constraint mapping involves examining career-related beliefs and behaviors. Ask yourself, What unconscious scripts limit my professional growth? Are there inherited family narratives about success and failure? Many professionals carry generational stories about work that unconsciously dictate their career trajectories. For instance, someone from a working class background might internalize beliefs about limited mobility, unconsciously creating barriers to advancement. These narratives aren't factual, but psychological constructs that can be systematically dismantled through awareness and intentional reprogramming. Emotional blockage mapping requires deep introspection. Emotional limitations often stem from unprocessed experiences, childhood conditioning, and protective mechanisms developed in response to past vulnerabilities. They manifest as recurring relationship patterns, unexplained anxieties, or persistent emotional triggers. A powerful technique involves tracking emotional responses. When you feel triggered, pause and ask, what underlying belief is driving this reaction? What past experience is being replayed? This approach transforms emotional limitations from mysterious forces into comprehensible psychological processes. Relational pattern identification focuses on understanding how personal limitations shape interactions. Many individuals unconsciously recreate relationship dynamics from childhood, perpetuating cycles of dysfunction. By mapping these patterns, you gain the ability to interrupt and redesign relational scripts. Spiritual and existential limitations represent deeper questions of meaning, purpose, and self-understanding. These constraints often emerge as feelings of disconnection, existential anxiety, or a sense of being trapped in predetermined life trajectories. Transcending these limitations requires a multifaceted approach. Incremental goal setting. Break massive transformation goals into manageable, bite-sized actions. Cognitive restructuring. Challenge and replace limiting beliefs with empowering narratives. Mindfulness practices. Develop present moment awareness to interrupt automatic psychological patterns. Systemic constraints play a crucial role in personal limitations. Individual experiences are deeply intertwined with broader social conditioning. Recognizing how race, gender, class, and cultural background shape personal narratives becomes essential in comprehensive limitation mapping. An intersectional perspective reveals that personal limitations are not solely individual experiences, but collective inheritances. Your journey of transcendence contributes to broader societal transformation. By liberating yourself, you create ripple effects that challenge systemic constraints. Practical limitation. Mapping requires consistent practice. Develop a personal limitation journal where you document patterns, triggers, and insights. Use visualization techniques to imagine yourself beyond current constraints. Create a vision board that represents your expanded potential. Remember, limitation mapping is not about achieving perfection, but embracing continuous evolution. Each insight is a stepping stone, each recognized pattern an opportunity for growth. Your limitations are not walls, but invitations to deeper self-understanding. The most profound transformation happens not through aggressive confrontation, but compassionate curiosity. Approach your limitations with gentleness, recognizing they emerged as survival strategies. Honor their protective intent while simultaneously outgrowing their necessity. Chapter 3. Navigating Systemic Challenges. Mapping Systemic Power Structures. The invisible threads of systemic power weave through every aspect of our lives, often unnoticed yet profoundly influential. These intricate networks of social, economic, and institutional structures shape our experiences, opportunities, and self-perception in ways we rarely fully comprehend. Systemic barriers are not random obstacles, but carefully constructed mechanisms that maintain existing power dynamics. They operate like an elaborate maze, with walls built from generations of historical practices, cultural norms, and unspoken social agreements. These barriers aren't always obvious, they're subtle, deeply embedded in the fabric of our daily interactions, institutions, and personal beliefs. Consider how economic systems create invisible boundaries. From educational access to job opportunities, the pathways to success are rarely equal. A child born in a low-income neighborhood faces dramatically different challenges compared to one born into economic privilege. These differences aren't about individual effort, but about systemic design that perpetuates inequality. Psychological barriers form another critical layer of systemic constraints. These are the internalized messages we absorb from society beliefs about our worth, potential, and place in the world. For marginalized communities, these psychological barriers can be particularly devastating. They whisper limiting narratives. You don't belong here. This isn't for people like you. Know your place. Institutional barriers manifest through seemingly neutral systems that inherently favor certain groups. Educational institutions, workplace structures, healthcare systems, each contains built-in mechanisms that advantage some while systematically disadvantaging others. These aren't accidents, but intentional designs that maintain existing power structures. Social barriers emerge through cultural expectations, unwritten rules, and normalized behaviors that restrict individual agency. Gender roles, racial stereotypes, and cultural expectations create invisible boundaries that limit personal expression and opportunity. These barriers are so deeply ingrained that they often feel natural, making them particularly challenging to recognize and challenge. Self-assessment tool, systemic barrier inventory. Take a moment to reflect on your personal experiences. Ask yourself, where have you felt unexpectedly limited in your opportunities? What messages have you internalized about your potential? In what spaces do you feel most and least empowered? Case study, Marie's journey. Marie, a first-generation immigrant, experienced multiple systemic barriers. Despite exceptional academic performance, she encountered challenges navigating college applications, financial aid, and professional networking. The system wasn't designed with her background in mind, creating additional hurdles that her peers didn't face. Her experience illustrates how systemic barriers aren't just external obstacles, but complex networks that impact personal confidence, resource access, and future opportunities. Breaking down these barriers requires a multidimensional approach. It's not about individual resilience alone, but understanding the broader context of these constraints. Recognizing systemic barriers is like learning to see an invisible landscape. Once you understand its contours, you can begin to navigate and ultimately transform it. Reflective exercise. Mapping your systemic landscape. Draw a personal map of your life experiences. Identify points where systemic barriers intersected with your journey. Note how these barriers influenced your choices and opportunities. Reflect on strategies you've used to overcome or navigate these constraints. Understanding systemic barriers doesn't mean surrendering to them. Knowledge becomes a powerful tool of transformation. By recognizing these structures, you begin to develop strategies for navigation, resistance, and ultimately redesign. The most profound act of resistance is recognizing that these systems are human-made constructs. They can be understood, challenged, and reimagined. Your awareness is the first step toward dismantling these invisible constraints. Remember, systemic barriers are complex, but they are not insurmountable. Each individual who becomes aware, who questions, who refuses to accept limiting narratives, contributes to broader societal transformation. Your journey of understanding is not just personal. It's a collective movement toward creating more equitable, empowering systems for everyone. Personal agency and collective context. Personal agency doesn't exist in isolation. It breathes and grows within the complex ecosystem of human connections, social movements, and collective experiences. Your individual power intertwines with broader social dynamics, creating a powerful network of transformation that extends far beyond personal boundaries. When we talk about personal agency in collective contexts, we're exploring a dynamic relationship where individual empowerment and community progress dance together. Imagine your personal journey as a single thread in a vast, intricate fabric. Each movement you make, each choice, each boundary you set, each belief you challenge doesn't just reshape your own life, but subtly influences the entire fabric around you. Consider Rosa Parks, whose singular act of refusing to give up her bus seat wasn't just a personal statement, but a catalyst that rippled through the entire civil rights movement. Her individual agency became a powerful spark that ignited collective action. This illustrates a profound truth. Personal transformation and social change are not separate paths, but interconnected journeys. But how do you maintain your unique identity while participating in collective efforts? The key lies in understanding that solidarity doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding strength in shared experiences while honoring your individual narrative. Community engagement isn't about conforming, it's about contributing. Your unique perspective, shaped by your personal experiences, brings irreplaceable value to collective movements. Think of yourself as a distinctive instrument in an orchestra. Your sound matters, and when played with intention, it enriches the entire musical composition. Practical strategies for navigating this balance include clear boundary setting. Establish transparent personal boundaries that allow collaboration without compromising your core values. Know what you're willing to compromise on and what remains non-negotiable. This isn't about building walls, but creating flexible, healthy interfaces between your individual self and collective spaces. Active listening with discernment. Engage in community dialogues with an open mind, but not an empty one. Listen deeply to understand different perspectives, but also trust your inner wisdom. Your ability to absorb diverse viewpoints while maintaining your authentic voice is a powerful form of agency. Incremental contribution. You don't need to revolutionize entire systems overnight. Small, consistent actions create meaningful change. Whether it's supporting local initiatives, having courageous conversations, or making conscious consumer choices, every action matters. Continuous self-reflection. Regularly check in with yourself. Ask, am I participating authentically? Does this collective effort align with my personal growth? Self-awareness prevents getting lost in group dynamics. Real-world examples illuminate these principles. Take Malala Yousafzai, who transformed her personal experience of oppression into a global movement for girls' education. Her individual story became a powerful collective narrative, demonstrating how personal agency can spark widespread social change. Another inspiring example is the #MeToo movement, where individual stories of resilience created a global platform for addressing systemic gender-based violence. Each person who shared their experience contributed to a larger narrative of empowerment and accountability. Building solidarity requires emotional intelligence and strategic engagement. It's about recognizing shared struggles without erasing individual nuances. You're not just a statistic in a movement, you're a living, breathing contributor with a unique perspective. Tools for effective community engagement include developing active listening skills, practicing empathy without losing personal boundaries, learning conflict resolution techniques, cultivating cultural humility, understanding intersectionality. Your personal agency within collective context isn't about being the loudest voice, but about being an authentic, committed presence. It's about showing up consistently, speaking your truth, and creating space for others to do the same. Remember, social change is not a linear process. It's messy, complex, and deeply human. Your journey of personal empowerment contributes to this beautiful, ongoing transformation, one conscious choice at a time. Strategies for constructive engagement. Power resides in the spaces between understanding and action, where personal agency transforms from a whispered possibility into a thunderous declaration of change. Your journey through systemic barriers isn't about conquering external forces, but about cultivating an internal landscape of resilience, wisdom, and strategic engagement. Communication becomes your most potent tool when navigating complex social dynamics. But this isn't about winning arguments. It's about creating bridges of understanding that can withstand the tremors of disagreement. Imagine your words as carefully constructed scaffolding designed to support mutual comprehension rather than demolish opposing perspectives. Effective advocacy starts with radical self-awareness. Before you can challenge systemic barriers, you must first recognize how those systems have shaped your own perceptions. This isn't about guilt or blame, but about clear-eyed recognition. Think of it like mapping an unfamiliar terrain. You can't navigate what you haven't first acknowledged exists. Let's break down practical strategies for constructive engagement that honor both your individual power and the complex social ecosystems you inhabit. Emotional intelligence as a strategic skill. Emotional intelligence isn't soft, it's a razor-sharp instrument for social navigation. When you can read emotional undercurrents, understand unspoken dynamics, and regulate your own responses, you transform potential conflict into an opportunity for genuine connection. Key components of emotional intelligence in challenging environments include self-regulation, the ability to pause before reacting, empathetic listening, hearing not just words, but the emotions behind them, adaptive communication, shifting your approach based on context and audience, practice exercise, emotional mapping. For 1 week, keep a journal tracking your emotional responses in different social interactions. Note, what triggered strong emotional reactions? How did you respond? What alternative responses might have been more constructive? Conflict resolution, turning friction into fuel. Conflict isn't inherently negative. It's an invitation to deeper understanding. The most transformative conversations happen when you approach disagreement with curiosity instead of defensiveness. Conflict resolution techniques. Use I statements that express your experience without accusation. Ask open-ended questions that invite deeper exploration. Seek common ground, even in seemingly irreconcilable differences. Recognize that understanding doesn't always mean agreement. Communication framework. Acknowledge the other person's perspective. Share your own experience without judgment. Explore potential shared values or goals. Propose collaborative solutions. Cross-cultural understanding. Beyond surface-level engagement. True cross-cultural understanding requires more than surface-level tolerance. It demands a willingness to challenge your own assumptions and sit with discomfort. Strategies for building genuine cross-cultural connections. Approach differences with genuine curiosity. Recognize your own cultural conditioning. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Listen more than you speak. Ask respectful, genuine questions. Practical skill building. Read literature from diverse perspectives. Engage with communities different from your own. Take language or cultural exchange classes. Practice active, non-judgmental listening. Personal resilience in systemic challenges. Systemic change is a marathon, not a sprint. Building personal resilience ensures you can sustain your commitment without burning out. Resilience building practices.